Welcome to the Queer Conversation podcast, brought to you by LOTL Media, a show where we discuss all things queer. I am your host, Silke Bader, a publisher and producer in the LGBTQI space in Australia for the past 30 years. Welcome to Queer Conversation and our LOTL channel, Shamim. You are the writer and director of a film that's being shown at the Sydney Queer Screen Film Festival during Mardi Gras called Polarized. Looking just at the description of the trailer and the movie, it is about two women who are coming from a very different background, especially from a cultural different background. It is very, very difficult, I think, to write and direct a film that actually talks about also LGBT topics, but on top of it, religion. It's hard enough to talk about gay, lesbian topics, but religion, you are bringing a woman from a Christian background and a woman with a Muslim background together. They fall in love and so on. What inspired you to tackle such a challenging topic?
Well, as you said, it's not directly related to my life, but it's certainly reflective of certain themes I've had in my life, and more importantly, things that I see going on around us. And Polarized, I actually wrote the screenplay around the time that Trump was elected and Brexit happened. So it was a time when you could see this kind of polarization even within families of the same cultures. People thought very differently. They were arguing, they were fighting. We're at a very similar moment, I think, in history now with the ground offensive in Gaza and people being very split as to the rights and wrongs of that. And so I think it's easy for us as human beings. There are times when you need to stand up for yourself. There are times when you need to stand up for what you believe in. And so for me, Polarized was beyond religion. It wasn't about Muslim Christian. It was just about the Muslim Christian was about the fact that these two could never meet, or they lived in different parts of the world. Lisa's weekends are at church and with her family, and it's not really looked as a good thing to work to socialize with the Palestinian family. And for the Palestinian family, they're busy with their own cultural world. And they kind of look down on the poor white farmers. Let's be honest. They don't look at them as people they're going to hang out with, because the Palestinian family in the movie are well-to-do. They've created a vertical farm that does very well. So it's these things of not just religion, but sometimes race, sometimes economics that separate us, So I wanted to kind of start a story with that. Two young women meet, and in fact, one of them gets fired for racism within the first 5 minutes of the movie. So it's not a promising start for a love story, but I thought my ultimate feel is that I thought it would be interesting to see if we could get them together. I can't help but have an ultimate outlook of hope, because I think there's enough despair in the world. I think there's enough fighting. There's enough insanity. And I really want to look at the ways that we as humans can find a way to be together and to see the world from each other's perspectives within a certain range. You don't want to step outside and see the world from the perspective of somebody who's advocating, something horrible. But as we fight a lot about stuff that doesn't need to be separating us. Race, religion, all of these things.
Still find it very fascinating when content comes across my desk that talks about, especially from a religious point of view, Muslims and the LGBT community, because there's just not enough representation out there. And you released this film last year. You would have had some feedback from viewers. Can you tell us a little bit about the feedback that you have received so far, good, bad, and ugly?
Yeah, the feedback been amazing so far. I will clarify that we've only released the film in Canada at this point, where we won 2 awards. It was great. But actually we won 1 award in Canada, 1 in LA at a festival. But the releases in the UK, Europe, and the US are coming later in 2024, and hopefully Australia as well. But the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. And I think with Dalia, who's a Palestinian woman, it was very important for me to have that representation. I think not only Muslims, but Palestinians of all kinds, and there are Christian Palestinians as well, are very underrepresented on screen. And I think you very rarely see Palestinians in the diaspora being successful on screen. A young woman who's an entrepreneur, a scientist. And so the issues keeping her apart from Lisa are not really that she can't go out or that her family, have this big say on her personal life, but she is, engaged to be married to somebody she's known from childhood and she loves very much. But I think what happens with Lisa is that she opens a door to feeling and experiencing life in a different way, beyond just sexuality even. And I think that really is something that once Dalia glimpses, she can't go back from. So I think that's the message that I think people are taking away from the film, that it gives hope that life is really this important thing that we need to grasp and live to the most of our ability, not just to kind of get through in a way that might have been subconsciously prescribed for us. So yeah, I think so far so good. And I've always had Muslim characters in others of my movies. I Can't Think Straight, The World Unseen. And again, the response has been overwhelmingly positive.
And in regards of the cast that you have chosen for this, did you face any challenges there that you had to overcome
in the casting process?
In the casting process, and then one step further, challenges in filming, and what is it that you couldn't actually film that you wanted to?
With the casting, I felt very, very lucky. In a way, this project was ended up being a lower budget than we wanted, so it was very difficult. We shot it in 17 days. We shot it with one camera. It was tough conditions. The upside was this cast. I got to really choose from across Canada. And, when it came to both Holly DeVoe and Maxine Dennis, their tapes were really, they stood out for me when they were auditioning. And again, in the film, they found the spaces between the dialogue. They really were able to bring the subtext alive in every single scene, because when people are talking about, work at the farm that they're on, they're not talking about work at the farm. There's something else going on. So they were able to kind of bring all of that alive, and they were amazing. But casting the Palestinian family was more challenging. We really struggled to find enough actors to choose amongst who were Arabic speaking, which was very important to me because there is a little bit of Arabic in the film. So we really struggled with our casting director to just bring in tapes, find people to audition for us. But, we were so lucky that in the end, we looked and looked and looked, and we didn't stop until we found what we thought were really the perfect family for Dalia and her family. And I think we got those. One of the issues that we had filming, we filmed outside Winnipeg, was finding enough background performers to be in the wedding for Dalia and stuff like that. So we had to seek out local Palestinian groups, as there were Palestinians and other Arabs living in that area, but some of them did not want to be involved in a movie that had an LGBTQ main theme, and some were okay with it. So that was an interesting process for us.
In the actual filming itself, you went into a small town in Canada.
Not so much. It was a beautiful town called Stonewall, but they're used to filming. And I think one of the great things about the movie was finding the small town, and was finding the grain silo and Lisa's home and overall the locations, because I think the locations gave it a lot of production value and gave it a real sense of place, most importantly. That you really felt the fields, those harvesters moving through the fields. I think having a day of just being able to do drone shots like that gave you a sense of where these people were located, the relationship to the land, why it was so important for Lisa that her family's farm got lost, because that land is everything to her. So I think that was okay. I think filming, the challenges were just that it was 17 days for a drama that was quite intense. So I really only ever gave Maxine and Holly 2, 3, maybe 4 takes. But, that's pretty much how I shoot anyway. We were lucky that we had a few days of rehearsal beforehand where we could really talk through the character arcs. Because when you shoot totally out of sequence. You may be shooting something like their big fight that they have at a point in the movie was almost the first thing that we shot. So, for them to pitch that to exactly where it should be, it meant that we all had to work together very closely to get those moments correct so that they would fit by the time we filmed the rest of the movie.
Talking about you, you've been a filmmaker in the LGBT space for quite a few years, haven't you? It would be interesting to find out how have you seen the changes of the industry within the LGBT space in filmmaking?
I think the world has moved faster than the industry, certain parts of the world. I think for me, when Hanan and I, my wife and I, who's also the producer of this film and all of my films, when she and I were first together 28 years ago, the world was very different. She's Christian Palestinian. I'm Muslim of Indian, South African background. So there was nothing that was thrilling about our union to our families, because it was very hard for them to deal with. But you're going back to a time 30 years ago when there was almost no representation of LGBT characters on TV or anywhere. There was kind of this otherness that nobody could overcome. So it was very important for us to tell these stories on film because representation was low, but because also it humanizes. I think humanization is a very important thing. Go to war or occupy people. There's a dehumanization process that makes it easier to crush the other people. And I think that's what happened with the LGBTQ community. If you don't have representation, you disappear and people can demonize you. So I think what's happened in the film and television industry with a lot more representation is so, so positive. So we feel very good about that. At the same time, yeah, there are issues. I think especially with stories with 2 women, we're finding we have a whole slate of series, a slate of films now that we're working on. But often the case is that people will feel that they're not as financeable because there are 2 women leads rather than a woman and a man or 2 men. Hearing it a lot more politely than we were back in the day when people would be like, can you de-gay that character? Or can you make one of them white? Or can you make one of them a man? But now, the sense is that women still don't have that box office and they don't assume that women have the eyeballs on TV, which I think is wrong.
These days, every film now, every TV show has got some kind of LGBTQI plus representation in there, which is just a massive change. Have you exclusively just done LGBT films?
Yes. Mostly everything I have has always had some kind of queer representation. It's been very important to me. I think the one that was probably the one that was maybe a slight exception is Despite the Falling Snow, which had a central love story between Rebecca Ferguson's character and Sam Reed, but the secondary story was a lesbian love story. But generally, yes, I think it's because yes, it is everywhere you look, but at the same time, the majority of lead characters in series are still not LGBT, and you wonder if something as magnificent as, for example, One Day, than you show from Netflix, would it be made if there were 2 women at the center of that love story? It swings and roundabouts. I don't want to deny the progress that's been made because I think it's fantastic. And certainly for our sons who are 25 and 21, they live in a universe and a reality where somebody's sexuality or who they choose to be with it's strange for them to even have to define that, which is wonderful.
Where do you think we will be in 20 years?
I'd love to see even more relaxing of definitions like that. I'd love to see a world where people flick on the TV and watch a story because it's just really well written or it's been greatly reviewed, whether or not the leads are of the same sex as them. So I'd love even more of that to happen. But I think the biggest bursts have already happened, and it's been amazing, really, because there was a taboo that needed to be overcome. And I think now that we're past that in many regions, that'll be great. But I'd love to see that spread to more areas of the world too. Right now, we have a range of projects. We are working on a romantic comedy that is called Arranged, and that it is about two young Indian women who are pushed together by their moms and a matchmaker to see if they will like each other enough to get married. They do not. They are complete polar opposites. One is a party girl and one's a very sort of homebody. But they agree to pretend to date just to keep their families happy. So it's kind of but of course they end up falling in love. So it's kind of a wonderful rom-com, like a Crazy Rich Asians or a Big Fat Greek Wedding, but set amongst the Indian community. So that's one of the movies that we're working on right now. And other than that, we've got a slate of television projects which we're going with. Again, a big range of genres: action, adventure, thriller. One is a Big Little Lies, kind of set in Wimbledon. So it's kind of fun. They all have some queer characters in them, but it's a big range.
Just like one last question, as you just said this, what do you think are the main things that people can support filmmakers like yourself? Is it basically to download the films or buy tickets, or can they get involved in any other way to support?
Both of those, honestly. I think it's I'm glad you asked, because we're having a lot of trouble with Polarized and our other films being illegally uploaded to YouTube and other places and being watched. And people have literally gone into cinemas and taken a video of it, and then, they talk on lesbian forums and whatever, I've been told, by fans of ours who are trying to kind of help shut it down. So yeah, just pay, if you can, pay the $5 or $10 or $20 or whatever it is for a ticket to stream it legally from a legal provider. From our website, Enlightenment Productions has all of the films for streaming and for download if you want to keep them. And it's a way that you can support filmmakers directly, because people say to us, when's your next film? And the problem with financing films is that if people don't see that you've had it's a business, understandably. If they don't see that you've had a financial success with that previous film, it always gets a little harder. So you can support filmmakers and novelists by buying the books rather than downloading them illegally as well. So I would just make a plea, think about spending your coffee budget that instead of illegal downloads. It will help everybody a lot more, and to get content that everybody wants.
Well, Shamim, thank you so much for joining us today and to share your thoughts on Polarized.
Wonderful. I think it's online as well. I hope everybody in Australia, or whoever wants to see it, not everybody in Australia, you never know, can go and see it. And we have on my Instagram and on the Polarized Instagram page, we'll always keep updates of whatever, when the actual release is in Australia, so that everybody can get a watch.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Facebook using the tag @LOTL or head over to our website LOTL.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.